specialization in the RFP and DDQ domain. Reducing basically getting a good accuracy, that is the hit rate of each RFPs that we answer, maintaining a structured content library.
Hello everyone, this is your host Royston welcoming you to another episode of Decimal Point Analytics Unplugged, a podcast delivering valuable insights on the ever-changing realms of business and technology. Our goal here is to provide our listeners with trends and expertise in various fields, including data analytics, AI, and ESG. We're excited to bring you an engaging face-to-face episode with our special guest today, Pushkaraj. Pushkaraj is an assistant vice president with this company and has been working with Decimal Point Analytics since the past 7 years. He also has an extensive expertise in managing teams when it comes to DDQs and RFPs, which is also our topic today. So yes, let's move to Pushkaraj. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Royston. I think that's a very warm welcome for me, and looking forward for discussing RFP DDQs with you.
Wonderful. So just to start with, if you could just give us an overview of what are requests for proposals and due diligence questionnaires, if you could just have some sort of background coming in from you.
So in terms of RFP DDQs and consultant databases, basically our clients are asset managers, and investors usually reach out, whenever the asset managers reach out to the investors, they send a list of questions or list of data that needs to get updated from the asset manager's point of view.
Right.
And that data it's provided via an RFP or via updating a consultant database to the investors. So we basically provide and handhold the client in implementing the RFP's best practices, as well as in providing the correct data that needs to be gone to the investor's side.
Okay, so you were just talking about consultant database. I just heard you make some mentions regarding that. If you could just shed some light on what are these consultant databases and how do they work?
So consultant databases are essentially consultants are the bridge between the investor and a fund manager. So the first point of contact between an investors while searching its investment criteria based on its search results, he will try to find out the correct asset manager, and he will base it based on the data that is being provided on the consultant database.
Okay.
So updating this data on the consultant database by the asset managers is a very important function, and that is where Decimal Point also guides the asset managers in updating the consultant databases.
Okay, I did hear you speak about a lot of players over here. So for example, you did speak about what our fund managers doing, what our asset management doing. Before we get to what DPA's role is and how does DPA have a value add in this, if you could just let us know who all are the players in totality when it comes to RFPs and DDQs?
Correct. So in terms of the players that are there in the RFPs and DDQs, first is the asset managers and investors, which we already discussed. Then the consultants, which play a role as a bridge between these two parties. The third are the databases. So there are RFP DDQ databases, content library databases. They are like QED and Diligent, which are very famous in the market. So they store the data of all the historical RFPs. They help in maintaining that data. And then Decimal Point, who basically handholds into implementing the correct practices on the content library, implementing the good practices in trying to reduce the lead time for the for the asset managers, and then answering the questions based on the new RFPs that might have reached to the asset managers. So that is the main work that Decimal Point team does.
Okay. So like you just said that this is what DPA's role is, and this is the value add that Decimal Point Analytics just gives in this particular space, that's like request for proposals and due diligence questionnaire. Is there something more that you can elaborate on the roles that DPA has, or some sort of technology that it's using, okay, and what is in it for DPA also? How does DPA benefit from this?
So in terms of basically value creation for the client. So in terms of value creation, our work is specialization in the RFP and DDQ domain. reducing basically getting a good accuracy, that is the hit rate of each RFPs that we answer, maintaining a structured content library, implementing its best practices such as any deduplication that needs to be done, basically standardizing a question, updating, changing data on the content library itself, then automating some of the areas in terms of, let's say, we have implemented large LLMs into the RFP domain as well. So that is also an area that DPA researches and provides that to the client. And then in terms of providing the data, we are dealing with the asset manager data.
Right.
So performing the calculations if required by the client, in terms of drawdown calculation, in terms of risk ratios that might be required by the client to update on these RFPs.
Correct.
So updating that is also a function that DPA plays for the client.
Wonderful, great. If you could just let us know, now we did speak a lot about DPA using automation. Say for example, you gave some idea of how do we use LLM, that's a large language model, in this particular space. If you could just tell us how were things done traditionally before DPA started intervening in this particular space, so that we get an idea of how this particular space of DDQ and RFP has performed in the recent past.
Correct. So traditionally, our fund managers, so our event directors are fund managers.
Correct.
Traditionally, this process was originally done by the fund managers, partly by other teams, based on what questions are being requested by the investors.
Correct.
And accordingly the fund managers used to provide the data and send it to the required investors. But right now the age is of the specialization, that is reaching out to as many investors as possible to get a fundraising for specific funds. So in order for the investment manager to focus on its own investment management function,
Right.
RFP team needs to focus their own domain expertise in terms of quickly delivering the data, accurate data, as well as reviewing across within different subject matter experts within the organization.
All right. And how does technology help to save time over here? If
So-
you have something on it.
Yes. So one thing is, once you get a proper guidance as in what the actual data is being provided by the asset managers, because understand this, that these are private asset managers.
Correct.
So there is no standard data that is being provided. So whatever
Right.
data that comes across from their side, we have to understand how the calculation goes, and then we perform the calculations. So one is the automating their calculations part. Second is in terms of, as I said, LLMs.
Correct.
So as we are in the ChatGPT universe right now, so now we have written a white paper as well as we researched on what areas can be automatically RFP processes can be done.
Right.
In that area, first initial drafts can be directly created by the LLMs
Correct.
via the structured content library, and secondly, uploading the data in a structured format can also be something that can be performed, can be explored for quick uploading and maintenance of content library. So automations do play a new
important
role in the RFP domain as well.
Absolutely, and it does save time. I believe it speeds up the process that we are looking out for. In short,
Correct.
over here, just to summarize.
That is right.
So since we've spoken about all this, right, and we see that DPA, Decimal Point Analytics, is growing in this particular field. Okay, can you just let us know what are the best practices that we follow, and how can this help us moving forward?
So one of the best practices is, our main goal is to improve the accuracy as well as reduce the turnaround time. So we make sure that we check the initial drafts that we shared to the client and compare it with the final draft that is shared with the investors. And based on that analysis, we make sure that our structured content library is more improvised,
Right.
or we will further improve our processes.
Correct.
And accordingly, the content library maintenance analyst, he updates the data on the content library.
Amazing. So I mean, so that's a lot of information that we've had till now. Okay. Before we just wind up this, I would just want to ask you, like, how do you see this progress in years to come?
So, as I'll just cover the historical part.
Correct.
So, in the last 5 years, this has picked up a lot of pace in terms of specialization in the RFP domain. The lead times of the fund managers, they are aiming to reduce it further, and so DPA was able to reduce its turnaround time from 7 to 2 days for any specific RFP that is coming across from the client side. And there is more interest that is speaking from the asset managers towards research and analytics companies such as Decimal Point to not only help them implement the RFPs, not only understand the data, but also implement technology in this space. So I feel there is a lot of interest in the next 5 years for the RFP, DDQ as well as consultant database domain.
Absolutely. Only time will tell, and we have we are in joyful hope that things do work on this particular front. That's RFP and DDQs, and we hope that Decimal Point also leaves a mark on this going in future. So yes, I mean that brings us to the end of this particular podcast. I would want to thank you, Pushkaraj, for joining me today. It was a pleasure speaking to you. It was lovely from Pushkaraj sharing his insights. I would like to thank the listeners also for tuning in. I would just say that please watch out for the next episode from our side, and till then, keep curious, keep learning. Thank you.
Thank you.